acknowledge the benefits we derive from taking and use of this land, and commit to working to honor, protect the environment, restore and protect the rights of Native and oppressed people, and support every person's civil and human rights. So we'll do introductions.
Well, should we? Oh, right.
Yeah, we'll do introductions now. Yeah, brief. Okay, Jim Brown, I'm chair of the Green Party of Nassau County. I live in Island Park.
Gail Brown from Island Park.
I'm Alan Hunter. I'm not visible on your screen at the moment. I'm the treasurer for Nassau County. I live in I live in New Hyde Park.
Ian Wilder, I live in Riverhead.
People on Zoom.
I'll go ahead. Cassandra Lems, I'm your program chair. I'm very sorry not to be there with you tonight, but I've been having quite the month, trying to deal with my husband's medical issues. I'm also one of the national co-chairs of the Green Party of the United States currently. Pass.
Now joined us.
Okay.
Close to the situation. I'm not saying that Joe.
Elizabeth is here. I'm Christine Schmidt. I'm a member of the Green Party. For a long time, I live in Freeport.
You're fighting for 4 or 5 months.
Okay, the background talking needs
I think
to,
it's a TV set.
what?
It's a TV set.
Oh, okay. Keep your TVs off.
I'm Cindy Rosenbaum, and Leonard asked me to come. He has a statement that he'll read, something that I wanted to share with everyone here at the end of the meeting. Unfortunately, I have 2 other meetings this evening, but I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you very much for letting Leonard just share what I'd like to share at the end of your meeting. And I'm going to sign off. It was really nice meeting everyone, but I have to.
Save it just a minute, Cindy.
Yes.
I want to introduce myself as saying that your best friend, Susan Blake, was the one that brought me into the Green Party in 2005.
Okay.
And
We're
that's why
just doing brief introductions.
We're doing introductions now.
If you need to say something at the end of the meeting, that's absolutely acceptable, but we have a program.
Thank you very much. Good night,
Nice
everyone.
meeting you.
Okay,
Nice
same
meeting you.
here. Have a good meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry I'm late.
Give us your name.
Joseph Naham, and Secretary of the Nassau County Green Party. Are we just doing introductions?
Yes.
Oh,
Not really.
live in Long Beach, on the Long Beach Environmental Advisory Board, and have a son and a dog, and I work for Taste of New York through the Cornell Cooperative Extension. I'm also on the Green Party National Committee and on the International Committee.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, good seeing you again.
Oh, good to be here.
Anybody else? Leonard?
Yeah, I'm starting to say that I've been a member of the Green Party since 2005, and it was Susan Blake that brought me in. I have the flags that Joey delivered to us for the last demonstration, and I'm not able to bring them tonight because I'm not there. And I looked at the agenda, and it says that the next meeting is going to be December 18th. I have a rehearsal in the city that day, so I will not be there. So if you need the flags for any time between now and the next 2 meetings,
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
someone can come and pick them up as Joey delivered them, if that's something you want to think about.
I'll talk to you, Leonard. Maybe tomorrow.
Thanks, Leonard.
Okay. Thanks, Joey.
Shelley?
Yes. Okay. I'm afraid to touch this thing now that I got you. When I got the picture of myself, I didn't see anybody else. So I said, that's no good. So I'd rather just have my name. All right. I'm holding up the flag here in Montpelier, Vermont. It's nice and cold. And it's very active. We have a lot of meetings, community-based people. And I printed out the agenda, and it was really interesting because whenever I go to Unitarian Church, the minister there, she's always remarking about the land that
Time's up.
that was taken from the Indians and who belonged. In fact, they're even in posters on the walls in Montpelier. So I'm very comfortable, settled here, politically and just physically. Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Elizabeth,
Yeah, hi. Hello. Happy to be here. I don't. Am I supposed to say something else?
Your name. Say
Oh,
your name.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth Henley.
Okay. Very good.
From Mineola.
okay, anybody else?
That's it.
That's it, okay. So, agenda items, very quickly, well, like the facilitator.
I nominate Jim Brown. Second.
Okay, stack keeper.
I'll do.
I nominate Alan Hunter.
Oh, yeah, okay, good, okay. You can see what's going on Zoom and everything.
Yeah.
Timer.
I'll do time.
Okay, Gail. Who wants to do vibes? Remember the scene? Vibes? Anyone? Vibes?
I'll do that.
Okay, Alan do vibes too. Okay, Alan. And note taker?
I do note take.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Sure to get them to the secretary.
Just remind me, please.
Okay, so we'll begin with our program and Sandra, do you want to speak about the program? Thanks for arranging for one this month. It's great. Thanks.
I do. Ian Wilder is the executive director of a civil rights nonprofit focused on fair housing. His work centers on advancing equity, dismantling segregation, and expanding opportunity in housing. His career spans 14 years as a real estate attorney, 2 decades of civic leadership, and 3 decades as a social justice advocate. Ian has worked on numerous major party and third-party political campaigns. He has served in a number of party positions, including as a co-chair of the Green Party of the state of New York and as a co-chair of the Green Party U.S. Presidential Campaign Committee. He ran for Babylon Town Supervisor on the Green Party line. His extensive experience in activist and civic leadership roles at county, state, and national levels provides him with deep insight into the workings of various governing and legislative systems. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I turn the podium over to you, Ian.
God, I hate that bio. It sounds so pompous.
I wrote it, so you can blame me.
Oh, I thought I wrote it. Oh,
Well,
in that
you
case,
did-
it's
you-
wonderful. And I'm an idiot. Okay, why don't fair housing is basically the area of civil rights dealing with housing discrimination and segregation. Fair housing is just a term of art, so I like to make sure to define it because I don't think most people on the street, if you ask them, would know that's particularly civil rights. Most people probably in 2019, right before we had the lovely COVID epidemic. By the way, I should do a caveat at the beginning. The reason the name of my agency is not mentioned is it's a partisan political organization, so I am not here as an official representative of the nonprofit that I'm employed by. I'm just here as an individual who cares about these issues. So this is not on my agency's time. They're not paying me to be here. But I do love to talk about these issues and I'm glad to talk about them. Okay, now that we got that out of the way. Many people may remember in 2019, Newsday did a whole program where they sent out basically secret testers to real estate agents. And that's similar to the work that the agency I work for does, the core of their work. But the things that I try to explain to people is, and I think Newsday did an incredible job on that. They did a lot of background. They did a whole week series. They showed a lot of things that were wrong in terms of segregation. How I think it was the Wantagh divides, creates a segregated dividing line where the population is flipped from one side to the other, which is not uncommon. In fact, if you know, and the Transportation Secretary of the last administration talked about this, often roads were purposely run between communities and actually through the communities of color to divide the communities and to destroy them. It happened in New York State. The lovely Robert Moses did things like that in New York City. But what Newsday I felt didn't do a good job explaining is that housing discrimination is not just real estate agents on the land. If you went to almost any group of housing providers, you'd see the same numbers. So, and the reason for that is we have systemic racism within our society. So that's reflected in every profession. If you see what happens in medical care, especially with COVID care, you saw people were literally dying. There was a doctor who died from COVID because they would not listen to her, and she was killed. She was an MD. So it happens everywhere. So it's not a Long Island thing. It's not just a real estate thing. It's a society problem. By the way, Robert Moses has a statue of himself in Babylon Village that, like the Confederate generals, probably should be taken down. I've also argued that Levittown should be named back to island trees rather than being named after races. It's not only the South that has to do things to change. Those are things that are not going to happen soon. There's a book by Heather McGee, who ran Soros's Democracy Foundation. I forget what it's called. And it's called something like This Is All of Us. And it basically explains what happens is when you create racist institutions, they eventually affect all of society, which is why, and it happens over and over again. Sometimes it's purposeful. Like in the South, where they were required to desegregate pools, they just go to the pools, so nobody has to. But that's why everybody, including white families, are finding that their children are moving off island now because they can't get affordable housing. Because the systems we have were set up, zoning was literally set up to create segregation. That's why it was set up, that's why it was spread. So if you have a system that was created to stop housing from being built, that's what that system is going to continue to do. Systems do not fail. They do what they're designed to do. And they continue doing it until they're replaced with a new system. So that is a major reason why we have a housing problem here, because we have exclusionary zoning, home rule zoning, where communities can basically exclude people not only from their entire municipality, but they can micromanage sections of the municipality and allow certain housing to be built in certain places and not others. Now, to me, that goes against the American dream. It also goes against every value that conservatives claim America is about, whether it's capitalism. You can't have capitalism unless people are free to live wherever they want, so they can associate with who they want. By the way, basically, the whole First Amendment is about the right of association. That was the most important thing to the people who created this country when they said they needed rights. It hurts us economically. We are hollowing out economically. The people who do the essential workers that we found out we need to survive, can't afford to live here. And we live on an island. Now, when Mayor-elect Mandami gave his speech, he talked about an organizer from 1199 who traveled 2 hours from Pennsylvania to New York City to organize. He may travel from 2 hours from Pennsylvania to New York City, but nobody is traveling, especially to Suffolk, where I live, from off island and from another state to work, especially for a job that barely pays minimum wage or above. They wouldn't be able to afford it. So the other thing that people don't talk about, and I saw it brought up, is about 100 years ago, they changed how Congress is set up. Congress used to be able to expand the number of seats. This was in Elie Mystel's excellent book. I think it's called something to the effect of A Black Man's Guide to the Constitution. Really great book. By the way, he is the son of a former Suffolk County legislator. His father was actually at my wedding. I knew his father. His father was brilliant, and he is not surprisingly brilliant. If you ever read the book, the story about his father is spot on. His father was hysterically funny and brilliant and commanding in a room. But what he talks about is they changed the rules. So you keep the same number of House seats, but you divide by population. Now, there's other problems because the small states get one seat regardless, even though if I did some math, it's something like if you take the smallest state and use that population, then California should have like a dozen more seats right now. But that also means, and this is where it gets interesting for people political, the so-called red states are more libertarian and they believe in property rights, which means they're actually attacking exclusionary zoning and allowing people to build more housing. So it's the blue states that are going to lose representation in Congress. Now, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that the North has its own version of racism. It was just a different version than the Southern racism. I mean, Dr. King said he never saw hate as much as when he went to Chicago for housing. But that's kind of in a nutshell where we are. Now, I can tell you the work the agency I work for does, and New York State's actually been good about certain things. They passed a lot more protections in other states. One that's incredibly important is called source of income. And that has become across the state the hugest area of enforcement. And what that means is if you can pay your rent, it shouldn't, legally, obviously, it shouldn't matter how you pay the rent. But there is constant discrimination against vouchers. Now, the thing is, vouchers and SNAP are actually a conservative method of providing services to people. Because the original method would be to provide housing or food to people. Before World War II, the government provided good housing to low-income and middle-income people. They got more into the segregation business coming out of it and switched to things like vouchers. And so what the voucher does is it gives somebody money and they go into the market and they give that money to a private individual. That's actually a conservative mechanism. So is SNAP, where they give them money and they don't get food from the government. They go to a private business who then gets that money by selling them food. So the conservatives that are against these programs are actually going against conservatively designed programs. The reason I bring this up is when you have source of income discrimination, which exists as a protected class in New York State, but not national. You have nationally created vouchers where tax dollars are going to waste because people have the ability to spend money for rent and other people are not accepting that as a way to pay the rent. And that's a problem because that means those tax dollars that we've decided should be used to house people are going to waste. States like New York have dealt with that by doing direct source of income protections. And the reason I spend so much time on it is across New York State, that's the largest area of enforcement because it is an incredibly large problem. After that, what we see is discrimination based on disability. For persons with disabilities, the problem is often what they call requests for reasonable accommodation and reasonable modification. Those are changes in rules or the physical plan so that someone could live the same as their neighbors live. Nothing here, anybody's asking for anything extra. They're asking for the same. They're asking same. That's how this country theoretically is supposed to be able to work. Everybody's supposed to be able to access the same. Those things are actually often resolved without a complaint being filed. And to give examples of that, let's say somebody gets a check monthly on the 10th of the month because they have a disability. So they can't pay the rent on the 1st of the month. So they want to change the rules. They're going to still pay their rent monthly. They're still going to pay the full rent monthly, but they cannot pay that rent till the 10th of the month. That's a reasonable accommodation. The most common type of modification, you need a handicap parking spot. Either there's an insufficient number, or they're too far from the door where the person lives, or they're otherwise inaccessible. Those are common requests that people have in order to basically access their living unit the same as everybody else. Now, if you just go into Google and look up Turo Law and look up my name, you will see an article that says 20 ways to fight for fair housing. Because there are lots of things that the average person can do. One thing I've been pushing for is that every other real estate provider, except for landlords, have some type of education requirement. Mortgage brokers have to have an education and a license. Real estate agents, though, originally there was a problem with that. What it was being done on the loan, but it's been fixed now, have to have an education, including on fair housing. Landlords, and I say this as a former real estate attorney who represented people buying properties, need one thing to be a landlord: a check. That's it. So what I've been calling for is very simple. It's very it's an easy lift, and it's win-win-win. It would create the most basic education. Most landlords are regulated at the local level by towns and villages. They're not really regulated by the state or the feds. They have to get rental permits. And it's one of the secret taxes that the municipalities do. They raise the prices, but they also do inspections for safety and everything else. You could easily add to that landlords have to adopt a fair housing policy. Not something fancy, just floor level, what the law is. So they have a piece of paper in front of them that says what the law is. And we provided the towns and 2 counties with that. I'll get into why the counties in a second. And if they adopted that, it would protect tenants. Now, I'm going to get into why the towns and the counties. All the towns and the 2 counties get HUD funds. They get funds from the federal government. There is a requirement, despite what some news channels think. In the 1968 Fair Housing Act, there is language requiring if you accept HUD money, then in everything you do, not just the use of that money, in everything you do, you must affirmatively further fair housing. That means not only must you do things correctly going forward, you also must fix things that were done wrong in the past. The counties are conduits in Nassau for all the towns and Suffolk for the smaller towns. So they have the ability to say, as part of us giving you this money, we have this requirement that we have to do this to make sure you're doing it. We want you to add this little thing. And the town, the current presidential administration has no interest in this. And the counties can say, we're doing what's required under the law in order to get this money. And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it helps protect landlords. Because if they don't know enough to educate themselves about the law, then they are, even though that's not an excuse, ignorance of the law is not an excuse, it protects them from possibly breaking the law. Because now someone has put the law in front of them and they have an idea, oh, I can't do this because there's things they may not even realize, like based on family status, or depending on state and county, there's military status, veteran status. There's different statuses where they could literally get in trouble for the law. And putting one sheet of paper in front of them is worth a fortune. And I will tell you, I don't think any attorneys are telling them, by the way, here's what you have to do as a landlord. They're a business person. That's their responsibility if you go into a business. I talked a lot. What is the timing? Do you want to open it for questions? Because I can ramble on for hours.
It's only 8 o'clock right now.
Yeah, I would say about another half an hour so we could have questions.
Or, well, you know.
Because we need to get out by a certain time.
Okay, yeah, we have to leave probably about 10 minutes to 9. We have.
Okay.
Yeah. You have more to say? We have.
Well, we can break for questions.
Okay.
Because you tend to give long answers. I think I gave people a general idea of what the area is about.
I put one question in the chat.
Are you on stat?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Leonard.
Yeah, I put one question in the chat. It was indistinct. Ian, what's the name
you
of the
can't
former
use chat.
legislator's son who wrote the book that you were mentioning?
I'm sorry.
What's the name?
Say that again.
Can you hear me now?
It might have been, well, there's several books that I often mention. I think I mentioned a book by Heather McGhee, McGhee. She's easy to find. She's nationally known. That was the book about
Heather McGee. No, you mentioned a legislature, the child of a legislator whom you
Ellie
knew.
Mistel. Ellie,
Can you spell that?
Aelie Mistel, Mystal.
Can you put that in the chat, maybe?
Okay.
He's nationally known. He writes for The Nation, or he might be an editor for The Nation. He's easy to find.
Jim Brownstack?
Jim
So,
first.
yeah, this is something that I've seen as a problem. I guess you mentioned it. For example, out in eastern part of Long Island, other places, you have a lot of, it seems like a lot of very wealthy people, big homes, and you have a workforce that's unable to find good housing, right? For example, and you look like Long Beach, for example, they're building huge condominiums right on the boardwalk. They cost over $1 million. There's also all these plans to build housing near train stations, but the ones that I've seen, they seem to be not affordable housing. And like Mineola, for example, they built like condominiums right near the train station. There we go. And I think they're very, expensive. And this seems to be something that happens all the time. Do you have any thoughts on that? How, and zoning, for example, zoning that if given Long Island's aquifers and stuff like that, the idea is something NIMBY, or is it something that's environmentally worthy to be preserved? So all these issues involved with housing, and it seems we have a big problem.
Is a mansion with 12 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms any different than a 12 apartment multifamily development? Because I mean that's what you get in Southampton. There's also another. There's a huge environmental issue.
Yeah.
I live out in the East End. In Southampton, there's something called the Trade Parade. Every morning, early in the morning, there is a barely moving line of traffic that comes into Southampton, because the people who make Southampton work can't afford to live there because there's no space for housing for them. Every afternoon they leave. How much greenhouse gases is that creating? And how much greenhouse gases is it creating for everybody else who can't afford to live in the communities where they work? Now, there was a concept called sundown towns that people who are African American, and there's an excellent book by the man who also wrote Lies My Teacher Told Me, Llewellyn, about sundown towns. Sundown towns were places where African Americans were allowed to go during the daylight, but had to leave by sundown, which, by the way, was also a threat against Thurgood Marshall. Often he would go into southern towns to defend people, and he'd literally have to be out before the sun set, or else he'd be killed. I'm a huge fan of Thurgood Marshall. I think he's way underappreciated. We have the equivalent of sundown towns, but we don't do it under threat of force. We do it by zoning. We keep people from being able to build. Now, the reason you, among other things, have all these mansions is there's no zoning for multifamily. Now, yes, you can argue the land's expensive, but there's land that can be turned over. There are things that can be done. But the zoning scheme you have encourages large pieces of property. It also discourages things like, in order to get the housing we need, and I borrow this from the climate change movement. Climate change movement is something called the wedge approach, that you can't get down to the carbon numbers you need with a single solution. So you need wedges to get down to it. You need multiple solutions. I disagree with the idea that nuclear is one of those solutions, but that's a whole nother meeting. You can get Carl Grossman to come talk about that. Love Carl. Brilliant man. The more I found out about him, the more I'm just in awe of his career. He probably didn't even tell you. I think he founded the press club before that. So I argue for affordable housing. We also need a wedge approach. We need multiple things that we can do. One thing, and the good thing is, and the governor did try and do this, and I give her a lot of credit. She spent a lot of political capital trying to deal with this problem. And she got torpedoed by Long Island Republican and Democratic, including the Suffolk Democratic chair, who's the Babylon Town Supervisor, torpedoed her policies, which were policies that came from other states that worked elsewhere. The first thing she tried to roll out is a statewide accessory dwelling unit law. Accessory dwelling units are what, when I was growing up, were called granny flats. They were little houses in the back. Now, this is not a new idea. I grew up in Copiague. Amityville, which is next door, is a very old community with very old houses, with very old little houses in the back. And it's an excellent idea because it's a way to use existing, built upon land. Now, the problem with that you want to talk about an environmental problem, the other environmental problem is the market will work regardless of what you want to do because people need to live somewhere. Now, people don't want to live in attics and basements, but they do if they need to live here and they don't have a choice. And that means those attics and basement apartments are illegal. So that means the sewer systems and the septic tanks are using more than they're graded for because you're not providing legal housing. So you want to talk about environmental problem? That's an aquifer problem. And I've never seen a number about the population of people living in illegal housing, but having grown up and lived in areas where it's common because people can't afford their mortgages on Long Island otherwise, and because that people need housing and can't find it otherwise, I think it's got to be a staggering number, an absolute staggering number. So there are environmental problems with not solving this problem. Besides racial justice, economic and political power problems, there's both water aquifer and climate change problems with not solving the problem of housing. And the thing is, people will go, oh, but it'll bring people in if you bring more housing. I'm friends with the head of the Southampton Public Housing Authority. And, you know, people want, oh, I don't want somebody from outside of my community. Let's not get into where that comes from. He said 80% of the housing they build when they build affordable housing are people already living in his town. I would bet, and I should ask him what the number is, what's the percentage of people coming from surrounding towns or from the current county? Because I would bet it's in the high 90s by the time you do it. So it's people who are already here who need that housing. You're not going to be attracting them here. What you want to do is, because you really can't crack down on the illegal apartments, which you're providing the housing you're not providing. Because then you're just going to have a large homeless population. And they don't have the resources to do it. The best way to attack unsafe, dangerous housing is to provide people safe, affordable housing. And you are right, Jim. The definitions of affordable and the numbers for the definitions of affordable and the formulas they use are staggering and frightening. And part of the problem is the builders who build the property have to balance the money they're coming in, because there are particular builders, that's all they build is affordable. Because the financing of affordable is an art in itself. And they have to balance that with government money, and what the affordable is a whole balance, and those are government formulas. And the problem is we're not willing to make the investment in the housing. You could drop the price if you drop the cost. You want to know what else would drop the cost? If you got rid of exclusionary zoning. So people would know for sure, if I want to build a multifamily development, that the land I buy is not going to be a risk. It's not going to take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop. That will drop the price. That is a significant amount of the cost of building multifamily housing, is the process that's set up to keep them from building that housing. Now, we have other problems. Most of the multifamily housing is put in low-income communities and generally communities of color. And they're shoved into certain places. So people don't get the ability to choose where they live. Especially because we have, though it seems we're finally moving away from neighborhood schools. Neighborhood schools are also a tool. There was something, there was just a thing about, I forget which community, one of the Nassau communities is looking at what's called the Princeton Plan. I didn't know how to name, which makes more sense. You put all the kids, K through 2, in one school. So you have all the master teachers who know kindergarten in one school to help all the other teachers. Besides which, there's a big difference between a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. They don't need to be in the same school. It would be better if you had all the 5, 6, and 7-year-olds in one school, because the little ones are pretty much babies. And the older ones are barely out of that. And you could set the schools up better. And I just found out that's called the Princeton Plan. I found out this idea elsewhere. That makes more sense in neighborhood schools, which also bake in segregation within communities. It is doable. Funny enough, because the school populations are dropping and I don't understand the connection, they're actually looking at this plan. I don't know why they think it saves money, because the argument is it's more expensive for busing, but they seem to think it saves money as the populations are dropping. So there's an overlap between housing and so many other things. Environmental pollution is generally dumped in communities of color where affordable housing is generally put. Overpriced supermarkets that provide lower quality food and not as good food choices are often in communities of color and lower income community. So their housing, and I realize I have some prejudice about this because it's what I do, but housing touches everything else. Even several presidents ago, Obama had a good phrase come out of his administration. He said, a zip code shouldn't determine a child's life.
Right.
And right now it does. And there are studies. There's an excellent economist named Raj, R-A-J, Chetty, C-H-E-T-T-Y, who has done studies about the effect of community and where children live. And even there are programs that try and boost up housing choice vouchers, Section 8 dollars, so that they can live in slightly more expensive communities, which often have better resource schools, and it makes a difference in the children's lives going forward.
Joey, you're next on.
Yeah, I give long answers. So it's good to get to the questions early. And tell me when to stop talking.
I believe, I'm not positive, but I think Oceanside is doing the Princeton plan.
It was no side assault, but the News 12 thing said several districts were looking at it. I'd be very happy if they were switching to the Princeton plan. I am the son of an education professor and the husband of an educator. And I actually think the Princeton plan serves children better. Being with more children with their age range and having a larger pool of educators, because teachers often specialize in certain age ranges, or they're more comfortable with certain age children. Why not have all those master teachers in one pool? Now, one other thing we have, because we have school segregation, they won't let go of their kids, is, think about this. Long Island doesn't have a science high school. It doesn't have an arts high school. We have all this money. We have a huge scientific base. We were one of the hearts of the space program. We have a lot of arts coming out of here, but because the schools won't give it up, we do not have the high schools that can allow our children to rise up even more.
Oh, I was going to get to the question.
Sure.
I just but just wanted to touch on that really briefly, if you don't mind. It's kind of speculation about why the Princeton plan might be saving districts money. Is I know Long Beach, they've been trying to close East School for a while because of the decreasing population. And if we took all the students, say K through 2, and put them in one of the elementary schools, and that we have for K through 5 or pre-K through 5 now, and then we would have no choice but to close it, and then the school district would say, hey, now we could sell this and use it for real estate money. That's my speculation.
Well, I have a very unpopular view about that. I think before the schools are allowed to sell the buildings, somebody needs to look at how much state and county tax dollars went in there. And those should be clawed back. And there are some districts like my own Riverhead where they are overcrowded. And the money should go to those overcrowded districts. Any money that didn't come out of the school district, and I will bet there's
I don't
lots
think
of
you-
state dollars
I
that
don't think
went
you
in
find
there.
that being unpopular in here.
Okay, not in here, but I'm saying generally. And by the way, that was in an op-ed I wrote for Newsday about a year ago. Because I think that's only fair. Because, by the way, these districts yelled and screamed, and they're still getting the same amount of money that they're getting before their populations drop. Now, all that money should be going to the few districts like Brentwood and Riverhead, and there's a handful of others, where the population is skyrocketing. Because guess what? That's where all the affordable housing is being jammed in.
And then the other thing I was gonna mention before the question was,
And I don't know if we'll save money or not. I have no idea.
yeah,
I don't care. I don't care. I like to plan better.
Interestingly enough, Long Beach, when they built the high school, after converting the Nike base to the land, they made it an agreement that it was gonna be a science-based high school because there's marshlands. Fast forward to 30 years, they wanted to bulldoze the marshlands, but they weren't able to. But they do have a nice marine biology program. My brother runs it, he's a marine biologist. But
And I'm not saying, I mean, there are some Nassau County schools that have incredible science programs, but we should have that island.
it's not enough.
I mean, there was, I forgot who it was. It was one of the famous Harvard biologists who said, I'm less interested in the folds of Einstein's brain than how many, something to this effect, and I'm paraphrasing, how many Einsteins are working in fields and sweatshops right now and aren't able to get free of that. And that's the thing that bothers me.
Here you
You can tell I'm a child of an educator. So
I envy that. My question was, you kind of taking it a turn.
sure, go for it.
You started saying that red states are attacking the zoning.
Yes, exclusionary zoning. There's a movement called YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. The last YIMBY convention I know was, okay, is everybody sitting down? In Texas. Because what happens is, if you do true libertarian views, especially if you look out of George Mason, where the economics department there is very libertarian, they literally. I don't need it reading my message. That's the one I drive. If you look at true libertarian values, they believe in property rights. And that people should be able to use their property at the highest use. Now, I'm not talking, I know a lot of libertarians, as I mentioned, and I forgot it was in this bio or whatever, because I often don't put it in my bio. When I was involved in Green Party politics, we worked with libertarians. We actually, for a number of years, had a number of lawsuits where they were co-plaintiffs with us against New York State.
We do again.
Yes, I don't know if he's still around, I can't remember his name. The nationwide expert on third-party politics was a libertarian who would spend 6 hours on the phone with anybody who needed help. And Richard Winger, brilliant man, very giving. I don't know how he did it. Yeah, so I knew a lot of libertarians. Some of them turned out to just be conservatives or MAGA and hiding as they popped up now from their views. And it's disappointing because what they're espousing now are not libertarian beliefs. I mean, I can understand the argument for libertarians. I can also debunk it, but that's a different story. But at least that argument has some set of values. The values really don't work in reality, but that's a different story. But yes, so those states are attacking exclusionary zoning, one, on a very practical way, because they need housing and they want to serve their economy, but also on a policy or ideology way. We should be lessening restrictions on how people use their property, whether it's accessory dwelling units or building multifamily, or being able to put a duplex up on what used to be a single family property, which has been done in some places also. Because that is possible also. There are a lot of choices out there that people are doing already. And the problem is not only the municipalities, it's the media on the island. I got into it with a Newsday editor about the governor's accessory dwelling unit. And I have problems with the two governor's proposals, but you know what? She's the first one to have done anything. So I did back them because we needed to do something to get started. And I said, her proposals go straight to what they're doing already in California about accessory dwelling units. And they've built tens of thousands of units. And the Newsday editor said to me, California is nothing like New York. I'm like, it's a large, populous, blue state that's wealthy, coastal, with a world-class city and suburbs. Explain to me what the difference between California and New York are. She didn't. I shouldn't say a gender because it might reveal who it was. But yes, our media is also a big problem with the governor's proposal. I would have liked if they discussed the governor's proposal, didn't have enough affordable parts in it. I do believe in TODs, transit-oriented districts. It's a good place to build up. It's a place where traditionally it's been built, but her plan needed some adjusting. But there was no public discussion of the plan. There was only a discussion of the horse race. Who's supporting it? Who's against it? Did she roll it out well? No, she rolled it out terrible. And by the way, I've told her commissioner of housing and community renewal that I thought the rollout was terrible, but I think she also knows I supported it strongly. But there was no discussion. The media failed to do its job, which you might notice it's failing to do at the national level now. It failed to do its job. Its job is not the horse race. It's not the money. The job is to discuss ideas. The classic phrase about the press is it's supposed to be a marketplace of ideas. They should have taken apart her plans, discussed where they came from. Did they work there? Did they not work there? Not make up excuses that those places are different, but provide factual bases, like in terms of population or other needs, that why they're different. We had none of that. Now, the governor took a lot of hits, and I give her credit because we wouldn't even be having the discussions we're having now about affordable housing if she hadn't taken those hits. And we also have, which I've been pushing the media to do, a lot of elected officials on record who said, if you don't change the rules that keep us in power, we will fix the problem. And I've been pushing the media. They need to now take those quotes, go back to those elected officials and say, it's a year later. It's 2 years later. What have you done? You promised us that we shouldn't take away your local power. What have you done to fix the problem? And the answer is they can't and they won't because the systems are designed not to.
Leonard's next on staff.
Hey, Leonard.
Hi. You mentioned that Long Island doesn't have anything like a school for the arts or for sciences. Doesn't the BOCES program serve that function to some extent?
Very small, very, very small. And they won't let BOCES do it anymore. There was just a proposal for BOCES to help share information and possibly resources between school districts. And the school districts freaked out. Yeah, I mean, I had a friend who, when I was in high school, she went through the acting program at BOCES, and she was actually on a TV show. But it's not the level of the School of the Arts in New York City. My dad went to Brooklyn Tech. We have nothing like Brooklyn Tech or Bronx High School of Science. I mean, we have schools with excellent programs, but we don't have something where we're bringing from across the region. I mean, my father was instantly a radio officer in World War II because he walked out at 17, having taken apart and built televisions in the 1940s. So there are some schools that have that, but BOCES doesn't serve anywhere near that. And I am a big supporter of BOCES. I wish it could do more. My brother got his entire living, his whole life, based on their photography program. So I'm not discrediting BOCES. They're not allowed to grow beyond a certain size. Because just like the towns, the school districts don't want to give up the power.
I put myself on the stack. When Cassandra Limbs was running for office, one of her campaign planks was that instead of the taxes being done by school district, there should be a statewide tax and distributed per the population of students equitably across the whole state.
Well, I do believe we should give, property tax, I was a real estate attorney, property taxes is a problem. Appraisals are a problem. It should be an income tax. Equitably needs a real asterisk on it, because it needs to be based on need. You can't give every child the same amount of money to spend, because not every child has the same need. I mean, start with there are children with disabilities who need more services. There are children who, and this, we seem to have forgotten this. The strength of this country was our immigrants. Growing up, that was beat into our heads, that we managed to do so much, including bringing Nazi scientists over to do our rocket program in NASA. We managed to do, they were Nazis. We managed to do so much based on immigrants. In fact, the wealthiest man in the world who's a racist is an immigrant. He's an African. He's an African. So, yes. So a lot of those kids coming over will need language services to get up to speed. But besides that, there's income inequalities that some households can provide a lot more, the households that provide less. And if the children don't have the same enrichment during the summer, often they fall back and have to catch up when they come to the school year, if that enrichment can't be provided otherwise. So, especially if all the adults in the household are working 2 or 3 jobs to try and get some type of affordable rent. So equitably, yes, but I'd say equitably needs to be carefully defined. I'm sure Cassandra did do that. Because you said, use the word equitably, not equally.
Joey again?
Thanks. I also believe that we were campaigning about the stock transfer tax.
Oh, God.
Somehow,
Yeah.
being a big supplement away from the property taxes for school.
Yeah, it's refunded back. For Wall Street, I think it's taken out, refunded back to some type of game, but all kinds of games played with Wall Street. You know, Wall Street has a private contract with New York City Police.
No.
Yeah, they have a private contract. I always said, if you want stop and frisk, I want 1 day of stop and frisk in Wall Street, just 1 day. And I want them to stop and frisk every person coming in and out, especially with drug sniffing dogs. 1 day, I asked for 1 day. So, but yeah, Wall Street has a private contract with the NYPD. Think about that for a while. So, off topic.
No, that's good. I'm kind of a layman when it comes to all the details of, say, like Howard Hawkins' Green New Deal.
Yes.
Are you familiar with it?
I know how.
Did any of the maybe affordable housing elements in there look?
I don't remember particularly affordable housing elements, and I knew of it more as a concept. And I will say that Howie and the Green Party did not get enough credit for, now, from what I understand, actually, the Green New Deal does go back before the Green Party trumpeting it. But the Green Party was the first one to put it out before, and I like AOC, I like her a lot, but before AOC was talking, way before AOC was talking about it. But that's a whole other discussion. I don't know about the housing parts of it. Howie is a very, very smart man. He's probably one of the nationwide experts on voting systems.
Right.
So I'm guessing it was probably a good policy, but I don't know what his policy was. I'll be honest.
May I have your attention, please? The lecture will be closing in 30 minutes.
That's
I wish to call the students, please finishing up this now. The public computers be turned off in 15 minutes. The class rooms and restrooms will be locked in 20 minutes.
Okay, I do want to mention one other quick problem, then we could,
Oh, okay, sure, go.
there's a problem we've been dealing with at least 5 years. We got some Newsday coverage of it. In New York State, it is illegal for a landlord to do a self-help eviction. They must go to court, and then the sheriff must do it. Self-help eviction includes turning off utilities or changing locks. We have had particular problem with multiple police departments for people who have limited English proficiency enforcing that law. At times, they were told, speak English, it's a private matter, you have to go to the sheriff, the landlord can do what they want. It took us twice going to Newsday to get Newsday to cover it, because the editor was killed it the first time. I knew what, and I found out why they killed it and made sure the second time we got the story placed. And we just did in the last year that they didn't kill it for the same reason. The reason they killed it was they said, well, we went to the police department and they said they didn't have any complaints. They didn't have complaints because you guys weren't taking complaints. You know, you can't prove nothing. I don't think I'm quite saying that right, but there's a mathematical axiom.
Negative.
Yeah. So yes, that proves my point. Anyway, so that has been a big problem. And it's hard for clients who are, especially in this atmosphere, who are limited English proficiency to want to speak out publicly. This client was exceedingly brave. She was willing to call the police 8 times in order to prove that it was a problem, because if you call once, then it's your fault. And she called 8 times. The police did all kinds of things, including literally going to the landlord's house and being told, oh, I'm his brother, he's not here. And then they just left. Now, this is a misdemeanor under the law. If someone robbed the bank, would they go to the bank robber's house and go, oh, I'm his brother, he's not here, and they would just leave? Now, I realize it's not the same as robbing a bank, but you get the concept. We actually got it Newsday once. We got some action on it, but it is talking about the police. That has been a continuing problem with enforcing the law. And it was made a misdemeanor just for that reason, because it wasn't being enforced. No, I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, just 2 brief questions. The one thing I don't
I'll
understand.
never breathe.
Okay, is that, I've heard about this, but I don't know how it works. In other words, apparently there's a lot of it in Europe. It's called social housing. So I was wondering if you.
Yeah.
If you could.
Social housing is public housing.
Is public housing.
Yeah, we stopped doing it in this country because we actually had public housing that was integrated in this country before World War II. There's an excellent book by a man named Richard Rothstein called The Color of Law. If you know who Ta-Nehisi Coates is, Ta-Nehisi Coates is a close friend of his. He talked Rothstein into writing the book. That whole book explains how segregation and discrimination, especially segregation, is not individual actors. It was government action.
Right.
The government did it. The redlining maps, the segregation was all government action, was government finance, was government enforced. Levittown was government enforced segregation. So so that's how that happens. What's the other question?
Okay, just briefly, it's like your organization, the work you do. Has there been any impact from the federal government recently on funding issues? Do you have? I saw in Newsday briefly that there was something, and how are you doing with the? Because you're basically doing. I mean, you're doing a lot of DEI kind of stuff that is not, it's not.
Well,
it's not administratively approved.
Well, it's actually. I mean, I would actually disagree. People might mislabel it that. We are enforcing the law. People argue that DEI is subjective, and you can get into that. We are literally enforcing the law, because that's the system that's set up. The nonprofits do most of the enforcement work of fair housing law, not the government. But there were problems with funding. There were lawsuits that the organization I work for were into against the government. Luckily, they've been worked out. We have been pretty much paid by the federal government. I will say, thankfully, we also have received generous funding from the state since the Newsday thing. They have joined other large, wealthy states in funding fair housing. And we're getting funding from Suffolk County to do fair housing work. we cover Suffolk and Nassau County, but we're receiving funding from Suffolk County. If any of you know your legislators, and you can tell them that Suffolk County is financing fair housing work. Now, I know with the current, and that's even under the current legislature we have. Now, I think we have some interesting individuals in the Suffolk. But we also have a different county executive, guys, too. I will give you a break on that, but that was also under the prior county executive. We were not receiving funding. Anyway, so we are lucky. We've been very, very lucky, but there were problems, there have been problems, and there are other organizations that have not been as lucky as us. I will say the place that I work, we have very good people there who know how to plan and organize things. So the organization I'm in has been put in a good place, but yes, it's still a constant question.
Do we need to move on to announcements and stuff?
Yeah, we're right. Yeah. Okay. Well, just want to thank you. It was a good presentation.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
I talk a lot.
Yeah. No, you
Say something.
Cassandra, I hope you're happy.
I'm very happy. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go on to announcements because we have to sort of leave by
Quarter to.
10 minutes. About the latest.
Okay, sorry.
Because we have to run out.
Don't.
I'm sorry that we have to end.
Yeah.
No informational. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I'm easy to find.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any?
Leonard has his hand up for an announcement. That's
Okay.
the thing that they were asking.
Okay.
So we got it. That, Leonard, you're on.
Thank you. I don't know if you'll be able to hear me very well. There's been a lot of breaking up on the sound, but Ian and his wife, Kimberly, were very close to Susan Blake, and that's the reason that I asked Cindy Rosenbaum to communicate with us about this and to show up. She wasn't able to read the statement that she wrote, but she asked me to read it. I sent that statement to you, Jim, and to you, Alan, so I would request that the statement that's in your email be inserted in the minutes and emailed to Ian, because I don't know how clearly you're going to be able to hear this as I read it, but I'll try to read it slowly so that it's clear. Cindy wrote, I'm Cindy Rosenbaum. I was a dear friend of Susan Blake. Susan died at my home just over 18 years ago in October 2007. I understand that many of you at today's night's meeting either knew Susan or are familiar with her work. Susan was dubbed the social conscience of Long Island. For many years, she was the coordinator of Peace Myths Incorporated, which after her death, Kimberly took over for a few years, I would add. And the tribute, if you Google her name, the first tribute that comes up is the one that Ian and Kimberly put up, and then there are others